Hi guys, how you doing? So today's episode we're going to be talking about time travel, and I've already traveled through time, I think. Or no, you did. I mean, right, Daniel?
I did.
No, you didn't.
When was that?
Oh, sorry, no, you just traveled, I guess, to a different apartment or a different house.
Oh, right. Yeah, we just bought a new house.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that did feel like time travel, though.
It took, yeah, exactly. How many days did it take you?
Well, it feels like it's still going because there's boxes everywhere. You can't really see anything here anymore. I moved them out the way, but yeah, there's boxes everywhere, so it's still kind of going.
I know what you mean. Because like last time I moved, it was like I think like I don't know, a few months after, and it felt like just literally a day had passed by. So
exactly, yeah. When there's boxes everywhere, it feels like you're just like you can't get things going right away. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a form of time travel in a way. Because is time travel possible? Well, according to science, it is. So, the dude that I'm sure you heard about, Albert Einstein, came up with the theory of relativity, and his take was on it that time and space are, they're connected. So if you alter one, you change the other. And also, the theory of relativity basically talks about how it's all relative to things. So, like for example, in space, if you're, it's the same, like I'm saying, like relative to how you are in your mind, what you're preoccupied. I mean, literally, time can travel drastically different. It's like that. I heard a saying one time. Was it like time flows much different depending on which side of the bathroom door you are? Because you know how it is, right?
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah. So it's kind of it's relative to to each one of our experiences, and then when it comes to the theory of relativity, according to Einstein, and I mean it sort of seems to be it's still a theory, hasn't been fully proven, but we still use or we go by that theory. When we, for example, do things like with satellites, like like GPS satellites, or any satellite really that's in space, because they have a internal clock, but they travel around Earth really really fast, right? Like I think some satellites can go from like the 8 or 9,000 kilometers an hour while they're orbiting. So because they're going so much faster than pretty much anything on Earth. That means that time travels differently, because according to theory of relativity, unless I'm screwing this up, but I'm pretty sure it basically means that the faster you travel, or the faster an object travels, the slower the time is going to move. And I know there's been already tests done with, I don't know whether it was like an astronaut or they just had like a spaceship or space capsule, and they literally had two clocks set at the same time. And then one of the clocks stayed on Earth while the other went up on that spaceship or whatever it was, satellite, and it just orbited Earth really really fast. And then when they compared the two clocks, the one that was actually on that fast moving object was actually slower by like I think it was like a second or fractions of a second. But it makes a difference. It means that time did actually travel slower. So according to
that's interesting. But how do they know it didn't just like the fact they're moving so fast, it didn't just affect the clock that they use? What kind of clock was this that they were using?
I don't know that, but I'm pretty sure, those are some pretty smart guys. Like, I don't know, they had like nuclear powered clock.
Technically probably the smartest guys out there.
Yeah. But so they would put in a lot of the, the potential for errors. I'm sure they would have eliminated it. And again, that's a scientific experiment that's been proven, meaning usually other scientists will come in, will try to disprove it or do another experiment that shows maybe there was a fault there. But so it's not like they did it one time. But actually now, because we know already how fast, like depending on the speed that you're traveling, how time gets affected. And actually which is something I learned recently, is that all the satellites, and that's part of the reason why I got into all this, is because I got recently that whole Starlink internet, which uses satellites, right, to connect to the internet.
Okay, I haven't heard of that.
And it's pretty cool, because then I started kind of reading up on all the satellites and how their whole technology works, and then just in satellites in general. And again, satellites traveling much faster or circling Earth, their time actually flows slightly slower than it is for us here. And so the program, the computer program that actually runs the internal clocks within those satellites has to correct for that. Sometimes it's like fractions of a second, but it has to correct it, because if they wouldn't correct it, then you would have horrible issues. Like, for example, like, pretty much most of us now use GPS for traveling in a car, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the way that it works is you're getting multiple, basically, satellites that you're reading signal from, right? So depending on, like your let's say your cell phone looks at connects to multiple, I think it has to connect to minimum like 4 satellites, but usually it will connect to like even 10, 15 satellites, depending on how your visibility is. And basically it connects to these satellites, and it's a one-way signal. So the satellites just emit nonstop this signal, and then our phones pick up that signal. And depending on, it basically looks at the internal clock of each of these satellites, and then it looks at how fast or how long it took that signal to travel to your phone. And based on that, because you can see that, let's say this satellite is supposed to be over there, right? And it took us took like 1/8 of a second faster than, for example, the satellite that's like way over there on the other side. So based on that, it looks at all the tiny little differences in time, and it compares it, and that's how we can figure out where you are on Earth, right? So it's like this constant, just computer basically trying to figure out and match these things. So basically, in short terms, it means that if those internal clocks in those satellites were not being constantly adjusted for the time effect, the fact that time flows slower there, then none of this GPS technology would work, or many other satellite technology wouldn't work. So it is already, you could say, proven that time travel is possible. It's just not maybe what people, I guess, expect, like like Back to the Future kind of thing. Like, hey Doc, let's jump in the car.
So technically, that ending to that Superman movie where he flew so fast that he turned back time, I guess you're trying to say that's a real possibility.
Yeah, I guess if you go fast enough, you technically should be going back in time. Now, another thing though, that's according to theory of relativity by Einstein, is that he at least doesn't believe that anything in the universe can travel faster than the speed of light. And if you were to travel at the speed of light, I mean, pretty much, like from what science says right now, you disintegrate. So it's not a good idea. But if you did manage to travel to the speed of light, technically time wouldn't move for you. Like basically no time would pass for you. If, relative to, let's say, what's happening on Earth. But if you went faster than the speed of light, then at that point, time would be going backwards, right? And then again, the faster you go from that point, it would go even faster backwards. So technically, according to science, if you can go faster than the speed of light, then you could go back in time. Although theory of relativity says you probably can't go faster than speed of light. So that's the kind of like a sort of a oxymoron.
So technically, you can't travel in time then.
Well, no, it's you can travel in time. It's just you can make time go slower, or you can make time go faster, I guess. But to go so slow that you actually end up going in reverse is, according to the theory, which has not been proven, that part, it's impossible. Because basically nothing can technically, again, some people, like Einstein, believe that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. But then again, dude, there was people like, was it like 150 years ago when first people started talking and building like the first locomotives even, and then cars, and then afterwards, the Wright brothers were building airplanes. And like in the 1800s, there was all these theories, and people said that like when the first locomotives started reaching speeds of like 10 to 15 miles an hour, they basically said you cannot travel. I think it was like it was some really big, I forgot the name of the scientist, but really well respected. And it was actually a bunch of scientists who basically said that they do not believe that you can go, I think, faster than like 30 or 40 miles an hour, which is like, which is like 100 kilometers an hour. That if you go faster than that, you're literally just gonna like rip your skin off your face and all that stuff. That's what people thought. And then, of course, now we travel no problem. I see many idiots on the highway go way over 100. So
exactly.
So it's clearly possible. So again, just because we right now think time of basically traveling fast in the speed of light is impossible, does not mean that it's so. So until we get to that point where we can actually test it, then I guess we won't know. So
I think my thing is it's just too hard to wrap my brain around like the paradoxes that would come up if you did travel through time. You know what I mean? Like if you met yourself. So like if I in the future travel through time to today,
yeah,
like how does that work? Because like right now,
well, you would see yourself,
I don't have
right?
that memory, but technically I should have that memory because it's going to happen.
No, because that would be you from the future. So you would technically see yourself, but you right now would meet an older version of yourself. But I guess then the thing that messes, I guess, with most people's mind
right now. So like, so how is it possible? You know what I mean?
No, like, but let's say, because there is actually one guy there. I didn't put in our notes, but for today's episode, but there is one guy who somewhere in Scandinavian, one of the Scandinavian countries, who claims he was, and I was like, it's like one of those funny stories. He was working under a sink, like
I saw that, and then he crawled through it,
through some hole, and he met his older.
They had the same tattaoo and all that shit.
Yeah.
I saw that.
I thought that was funny. But yeah,
man.
I mean, like, so let's say if Daniel from 20 years from now, you know, let's say he's like, fuck this, you know, there's this new time machine thing, and let's try it out. Boom, flies back to here. You meet him right now. I mean, it will be technically you, but it won't be you in your experience. So it would be technically like a clone of you. I mean, as far as you're concerned, because he would have his own body, his own mind, right? He would genetically be, I guess, identical to you. He would just be older, but otherwise it would just be another person, like another copy. So if you kept on coming back and back in time, you could literally like make 1 million copies of yourself, right? Which that's kind of what messes with, you know what I mean, with I guess with our logic, because we're, I guess, as far as animals, including human beings, we're used to this linear time, you could say, right?
But then what happens to the time? Like, okay, so using that example again, if I went back in time to today, to this conversation right now, what happens to everything that happens after this conversation? You know what I mean? That happened. You know what I mean? Because wouldn't that make like a second timeline? Because then there's a whole timeline of,
I guess, I mean,
after today from before I visited, that's going to happen. You know what I mean? And then but a new timeline from when I did visit.
But in your right now experience, there would be no other timeline, because you right now haven't lived in the future. I mean, think about this though. Like, if you really think about it, for us human beings and for all the animals on this planet, at least, because we don't know how it is on other planets, time doesn't exist. If you really think about it, is there really a future, past and present? In your experience, I'm saying.
Like my own personal experience?
Yeah.
If there is a past and a present?
Past, present, and a future. Is there such a thing?
There's for sure a past and a present, but
why?
Future could be whatever, really.
Why would you say that, though? How is there a past, even?
How is there? Like, because I have my own past, right? So
no, so you see, you have a memory of what happened, of what you did. But think about that. Everything that ever happened to you that you remember, so you can label it as your past. All of it happened now, right? In the present, all of it. Even just when we started this episode, it's already, you could say, we can recollect it and we can maybe play it back, but it doesn't otherwise exist anywhere. It just existed in the now, in the present, right?
Oh, okay. So do you mean okay, I get what you're saying now.
And
I guess technically no, there's no real past. Like you can't go back and visit it or anything.
Yeah, it's not a tangible thing. It's all just our recollection. Like literally, if I were to right now, I don't know, drive over there, hit you in the back of the head with a shovel, and then you come out of a coma, and then hopefully you that wouldn't like mess up your brain any other way. But let's say you lose all your memory. For you, there would be no past. You'd just be like, okay, like a newborn baby. There's no past. It's like, okay, I don't know what happened. You couldn't care less, right? So it's just literally, it's a mental concept. A past just as the future is a mental concept. Like I think one of the episodes we kind of touched on it, that I mean, all these problems now that especially like young people have, but whatever, I shouldn't say young people, just people in general. So there's a lot of messed up people, and they're complaining about all these things and this and that, and they live these privileged lives, and it's because they're living in their mind. They're always either concentrating on the past, so like, this thing happened to me in the past. Oh my God, whatever. I guess I got spanked when I was a kid or whatever. Like they have all these things and they're reliving moments. So it's not like that past is here. Those events happen. That's it. And they happen in the now. But they're just reliving it. So in a way, you could say they're kind of time traveling in their mind. And then you have the other, I guess, spectrum of people who are constantly worried. I'm sure you've known people like that. Always worried, always thinking, oh my God, what is this? Oh my God, what if I don't have money to pay my bills? Oh my God, what if she cheats? Oh, my God, what if this thing happens? Oh my God, what if I get caught? Blah, blah. And they're always living in the future. But it's not like the future has happened. Nobody knows what's going to happen. It's not a tangible thing. They're just living it in so they're imagining. Literally, it's all a mental concept. But it really, if you think about it, everything that ever happened or anything that ever will happen only happens in the now. So technically, in our experience, there's only the present.
Yeah, that's fair. When you put it like that, that makes sense.
So now going back to that idea, if you from the future were to come back, let's say right now, and it's like peeking out the window out there, then, he would be, basically it would be a brand new experience for you. It would be happening in the now though.
Right.
And for that Daniel from the future, he maybe would remember, hey, I was recording this podcast and there was nobody there when I recorded the podcast. But for him, again, that was his experience. So in a way, you could say there's two Daniels there, because then there will be a Daniel like you right now, that you're doing a podcast and then you yourself show up and now there's two of you. And then in his experience, he could remember, I remember years ago I did this podcast and I was sitting there, but there was no me from the future, right?
So I guess it more or less, would create its own timeline, essentially.
I guess you could think, but again, it will be a mental concept in his head and in your head, because technically in the moment of now, which is the only thing you can ever experience, you guys would be there together, right? And you could hold hands and skip off into the sunset. And that'll be the end of a romantic.
Perfect person. No. Yeah. But yeah, that's interesting. It makes sense though. Like when you put it like that, I guess it would make sense. Like that's how it would have to happen.
I mean, it does mess with your head though, because there's actually a story about John Titor. Have you ever heard of this guy?
No.
Okay, so John Titor, I'm gonna hear, because I don't remember all the details about him, but he's one of those stories that I would say, even though many people said that this guy is not credible, it's whatever, BS, he's one of those stories where I would say, there's something to it. There's something to it as opposed to like being complete BS. So basically, in the year 2000,
he didn't just crawl from under his kitchen sink and meet himself, did he?
Exactly. No. It's not that just like weird, right? So basically, this guy in the year 2000, right, a guy calling himself John Titor, basically you could say showed up suddenly on the internet and announced that he's a time traveler from year 2036. So, and then of course people are like, whatever thing, and it's interesting because the way he did it is he was on a forum. I forget now which forum it was, but I remember I came across it already after he was gone.
Probably like Reddit or 4chan or
something. Yeah, but it was like, again, year 2000, so I don't even know if those were around, but something like that. Yeah. And I remember, I think that forum is actually still around, so you can still actually see all the original things that he wrote, things that people wrote to him. Because if I find it, I'll put it in the link in the description. But there's actually a book that I'm also been like kind of referencing called "Who Authored the John Titor Legend." It's on Amazon. Again, I'll provide the link. Okay. But basically, what I found interesting is when somebody told me like, "Oh, this dude shows up on a forum and claims he's from the future," and nobody ever saw his face, never uploaded any pictures, or it's just text, just him typing and thing. I just thought, okay, well, it's easy to just claim anything, and nobody knows anything. And I don't know about where you're
I
from.
Could say the same shit.
What I found interesting, though, is, and I think that's where most people haven't done that, is I actually went, I remember this was years ago, but this was, I think, 2004 or 2005, like when I heard about it. And I remember that I found the forum and I found all the posts there, and essentially started reading through it, a lot of it, because it went on for, I think it was for like a year. And he, introduced himself very casually, this and that. Some people started asking questions. Many people just ridiculed him, right? And he pretty much just said right off the bat, well, I don't really care about convincing any of you. That's not what I'm here for. So somebody asked him, why are you here for? And he said he's been sent back to 1975 to retrieve an IBM computer. It says IBM 5100 computer for something that it's needed for something in the future, in the year 2036. Essentially, he said he was sent as part of this military mission. He's from year 2036, where U.S. has gone through sort of you could say, a global war, like a nuclear war, but also civil war. He described certain of the events. He said he's I think he was from Florida. Claimed that it was kind of pretty much like martial law, but it was better than some other parts of the United States. That U.S., I believe China and Russia got involved. There was like a big nuclear blowout. He doesn't know what happened to the other countries, like information's a very thing. And I just thought to myself, it's like a good post-apocalyptic kind of story, right? It didn't take my thing. What I found interesting about his story is that he was the first one to kind of then say, because when people started asking him, like I think it started with like somebody on the forum asked him, like, oh, so if you're from the future, then who wins the World Series this year? Something like that. And he started like laughing and he said, why would I bother remembering the who wins every major sports concept, from 30-something years, in my past, when first of all, I didn't even know if I'm going there. I didn't care if I'm going, I wouldn't care about remembering such information. And he said, and in my timeline, he said, there is no sports, like major sports anymore. It's just basically the world. We have other bigger problems to worry about. So when he said that, and then he said, even if I told you, he said, doesn't mean that it would come true, because essentially I'm creating a new timeline right now. So by being here, I'm already affecting it. And by discussing things and altering your decisions or whatever, I'm already creating a new timeline. So it's not going to be the exact same timeline thing. So in my timeline, maybe these guys won or that guy won. And he said, if I already cared about it and tried to remember all that information, then I could relay it. But again, that could have already changed, or I could have in some small way affected it, or other people who traveled in time could have affected it. So and that was the first time I ever heard of that concept, that it was multiple timelines. Another interesting thing was that he said, because kind of how he like went back to the 70s, because he was supposed to go to 1975, and then he went to the thing, and pretty much made it sound like he just did not want to be part of this military experiment. So he's kind of hiding in the year 2000, but he said he's probably going to be discovered pretty quickly anyways, and he'll have to run. And he said he can run to a completely like something like an alternate timeline, because the time machine that he had used, and he kind of described it in one of the posts, I remember. But he basically said it's very primitive technology, meaning the longer or the more you want to go into the future or into the past from the current time, the less accurate it is. If you travel like really things, so basically you got to go faster. Again, you got to somehow traverse through space faster, and that causes it to be less accurate. And he said, but we already know of other beings from this planet, he described, that are far, far more advanced, and they're from both of our futures, because they've already visited us in our time, and they're already here in your times, he said. And they have much more superior technology, but they're saying that we're not capable of, we're not responsible. So they, at our current state of development, so they can't share that technology with us. Because
it went from time travel to aliens.
Well, not really, because he's pretty much saying that they're basically humans, but just so far advanced that they guess they might be like aliens, but they're ours, like they're our descendants. Okay. But they, I guess, developed and thing. So, for me, I remember I got into it and I started reading this whole thing, making notes because, I make films. So I was right away like, oh, it could be a cool story for a film, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of good ideas in there.
Yeah. So that's kind of why.
Even if it's a lie, it's
exactly.
That person's pretty good, pretty creative, I should say.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, that I think, I'm glad in a way that I don't have this judgmental and I guess... very ridiculing mind where I'm like, I read something or hear about something and I go, it's bullshit, whatever. And I'm not even going to look into it because I feel like if you're a filmmaker, especially, but if you're writing books, coming up with stories, I think you have to be open to really crazy ideas because you never know. Some of these ideas, I've done this film called NWO, United We Stand, which is really far-fetched story too. And it actually was from one of these forums. I just read a whole bunch of these conspiracy theories. I kind of put them together. I thought that some were interesting and this and that. And I made a film, went viral on the internet. And Alex Jones actually bought it off of me. And he had it on on his channel and all that stuff. Website before he got banned on the internet. So it's you never know. But it's just sometimes you can get really cool original ideas by looking at this. Basically what at the first glance seems like a really crazy out there story. So to me, I'm still not going to say that I'm convinced that John Titor is a real time traveler, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of, another thing that really made me stop and think is because he kept on saying over and over, kind of almost like laughing, but almost saying I feel sad that you guys don't realize that how basically that you kind of don't realize how much of a lie you're living. He's saying you're totally not aware, and this is again year 2000. Most people didn't talk about things like that. Where he says, you guys are not aware where your food comes from. You're not even aware of what you're eating, how unhealthy all this stuff is. It says we in the future we wish we had access to some of these things that you guys have, because but we had to learn to be kind of more reliant on that stuff. And we're also, I guess, after the whole nuclear fallout or whatever, he claims, it's really bad. And I just simply thought to myself, well, that's an interesting thing. Another thing he said was that somebody asked him, well, how come you don't have all this information about, because they're asking him about what happens in the part of the world or this and that. And he says that the internet really blows up and then it just completely gets shattered because of some of these events. And some of the things, so he said that, and then another thing he said is people completely stop trusting mainstream media, news organizations, things like that. And again, in the year 2000, everybody trusted everything. Now think about it. I mean, CNN, Fox, all these things, they're dying. Mainstream media is dying. Even when it comes to entertainment, a lot of it is dying. It's all just original content creators, right? Who are doing stuff like our podcast or whatever that people are turning into. And that's another interesting thing. Somebody asked him, goes, well, so how can you, how do you find out news? And he goes, well, you hear about it, he said, through the internet, but it's hearing it directly from people, from their experience. And I was like, okay. And I remember, I also, at that time, and again, when I heard about it, I think it was around 2004, it was hard for me to grasp that, because I was I worked at that point on a big studio film. And it just seemed to me, how could these big studios and big projects, how could they be made by small time, by independent creators? How could news be replaced? It just did not gel with me at all. Now, of course, we're seeing the early stages of that. I mean, there's some incredible animated films even, or independent films that were produced with no money. There's a lot of people who just literally, they have a cell phone and they start broadcasting online, and they have really big, successful news networks. And literally, I think the top guy on Facebook now has got millions of views every week. He's I forget his name, Bongino or something. He's literally, I think now, I'm pretty sure now he's advanced, or upgraded his equipment. But he just started with his cell phone, and he just literally was the reporting his honest opinion and what he heard about different world events, and people start turning to him. It's like people don't want all this overproduced crap and everything. So anyways, that's what I found interesting about John Titor, the heat thing. And then, of course, he did talk about something about that there's a big event coming, and he said it's one of these, I think he called it an anchor event, that this thing can't be changed, but that will start the whole, I think he might have even said awakening process, or it will basically make people stop and kind of rethink a lot of what they view as their reality, as their the way that the world works. And of course, and then he disappeared in the beginning of 2001. And of course, a few months later was 9/11, which kind of shook the whole world, right?
Right.
And after 9/11, all these big changes in travel came, and all these accusations of corruptions between different governments, including the U.S. government, like all these crazy things happened. So, again, he could have just been lucky, and he could have just predicted he could say something like that. Again, he was so he didn't specify the time. He didn't say exactly what was going to happen. So at the same time, it's like I could say something like something big is coming. Something so big, it's going to, I don't know, it's going to make everybody think. And it's like, okay, maybe in a year from now, something will happen, or 2 years. And some people will say, see, he warned us about it. It's like, well,
yeah, it's too vague.
Exactly. It's so vague that I think so. So that's what I'm saying. I don't necessarily believe that John Titor was a real guy who traveled back in time, but I would say it's one of the, like, when you really read the posts and you kind of just are at least willing to suspend your belief or reality, then it really does. It's one of the more credible stories to me.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe look into that one.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to provide the links for you guys, but what about you? What you got? Any stories?
No real stories, but I do have that video I sent, the Mike Tyson one. That one I thought was pretty interesting. They actually asked him about that. I should have pulled that up, but they actually asked him his opinion on that. Obviously, it didn't sound like he thought it was a time traveler, but it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see here. All right. Let me see. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me skip here.
Is there something out of place in this
video?
Look closely. It's a Mike Tyson fight from 1995, 21 years ago. And what's that guy in the crowd holding? Could that be a smartphone? We're used to a sea of smartphones recording historic events like the Pope's visit to America. But back in 1995, the internet is going wild with headlines like, "Did time traveler film Tyson fight?" We've seen this before. Check out this Charlie Chaplin movie premiere from 1928.
Oh yeah, I heard
about
it.
Is that a woman walking with a cell phone? Sure looks like it. Look again. And there's this footage from 1938. It sure seems as if she's talking on a cell phone. Back to the 95 Tyson fight. Well, we may have solved the mystery. We did some digging and found out the device in the video is not a smartphone at all. It's an early version of a camcorder called the Dicam Logitech.
Why is it human beings are so much more willing to think up an idea like, well, they must have gone back in time with a smartphone, as opposed to saying, I wonder what camcorders looked like in 1995?
Yeah, I'll tell you that to me, like whether it's this thing or, like that woman here walking the thing, like, I saw that those devices back in the 30s where, and it just looks like an older woman, where they were basically like a hearing aid that you kind of hold to your ear. And then, when you have it, with like up to your ear, it's kind of like, like a little, like a megaphone or something, and it just picks up the sound better so you can hear it. So maybe she was just, I don't know, trying to
That's what they want you to think, man. She's a time traveler.
All right.
No, usually
it's a solved case,
like
guys.
Showed you, there's usually an explanation for it, but
Yeah, well, and I guess in the end, though, it's like with that guy John Titor, or with these clips, you'll never know for sure. There's just no proof, I guess, either way, right?
Yeah,
because it could.
But it is interesting because you know what? If I was to travel back in time, I would be somebody that would definitely travel to watch Mike Tyson fight.
It's like of all the things I could see in the world, I want to see Mike Tyson fight.
But live. And then especially if they think about it, if you're in the future and you heard about this guy that used to knock people out in like 10 seconds, maybe they don't have that anymore. Maybe there hasn't been anybody like him in 100 years, so they're like, man, I gotta go see this guy just crush people.
I guess
even if you think about it, there hasn't been a guy like Mike Tyson even in boxing for like probably the last 15 years, really. Still, he's a once in a lifetime.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like that episode we did about the fighting. Let me see here. This other photo you sent.
Because I could even see myself going back to watch Muhammad Ali fight too. Because I never was even around for his fights like live. Not like with Mike Tyson, I've never been to one of his fights, but at least I got to see them on pay-per-view live. But it'd be interesting to go back to like one of Muhammad Ali's biggest fights, and like him versus George Foreman, and actually be in the crowd and watch it and record it on your cell phone.
Yeah. Well, here, so let's look at this thing now. So this photo you sent,
that was the other picture. Yeah. That was another interesting one.
So this one, I've seen this, and it's interesting because I saw it because of this guy here. So this guy right here, they claimed that it. I forget where it was, but I read something that he's like very similar to some other guy from the year 2000 something, like in the 2015 or something.
Oh, okay. I didn't even see that guy. I remember them talking about the other guy in the photo.
And then he literally disappeared. And then later on, people found this photo because of, I know, but what you're going to say before, because of this guy, right?
Exactly. Yeah, him.
Yeah, but somebody then said this guy looks very oddly similar to the guy that claimed, to be the time traveler, and then he literally disappeared. Whereas this guy, nobody knows, but it's simply because of his outfit, right? Because this is what, like 1930s?
It's very modern, yeah.
Yeah, and he's got...
Especially compared to everybody else.
Yeah, those glasses, and then that shirt, and I don't know if they had T-shirts like that or those kind of hoodies. So, I mean, it could be, but I don't know. I mean, isn't there a chance that, that's... They had... Like it's like right now, if you look at those fashion shows, I mean, there's like some pretty crazy out there outfits that people have,
right?
And it's just
maybe that guy was just really ahead of his time.
Yeah, exactly. Like he was just, he just came straight off of on those crazy fashion shows and thing.
They're like, give it up, George. You have no career in fashion.
No, this will never catch on.
Will never catch on.
Do you know where this photo is actually from, though? Because I never looked further into it. Like, what is this supposed
Honestly,
to be?
I don't remember. I just remember seeing that photo in a few time traveling videos. When you go down the YouTube rabbit hole. Like I've done that before with the time traveling thing. So that's why I remember the Mike Tyson one, and I remember this photo. There's a few I remembered because they stuck out. I'm like, those ones are really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember where that photo's from.
No backstory. But I see most of it here is tagged as, time traveler or something.
Oh, yeah.
All right. What's the next one you got?
Sorry?
What's the next story you got?
For time traveling?
Yeah.
I don't have any time traveling stories.
Oh, come on.
That's not something I've been like I said, I went down the rabbit hole once or twice, but I don't know if I have too many. There's not really too many like time traveling stories out there that I know of. Like there's some pictures. But
I find that there is a lot. It's just most of them like are so far fetched.
Oh, they're crap. Like there's the one with the guy under the sink. We could talk about him, but like
yeah. Well, we kind of did already.
Clearly actors. They got somebody that kind of looked like him, but even like their features didn't even look that close together. Like they just found somebody, they slapped a tattoo on him, and
yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
but I don't think that actually. I don't think that guy. They had a picture at the end, no, of the two of them.
They did, yeah,
and a video too as well. I think.
Yeah. All right, let me play this video then.
Earth is a fascinating place. From the extreme weather that we witness to the many different species of animals that inhabit it. We wake up every day and we have the choice to do whatever we want. Whether it be getting a job, eating breakfast, or going for a jog, these are all things that we can control. However, one thing we can't control is time. Time is forever ticking. With each passing second, a new person is brought into this world and another one leaves.
I really don't like this guy's voiceover, but anyways, let me skip.
Scientists are exploring the idea of time travel. He did. 2003, Toronto, Canada. Andrew Carlssin, a 44-year-old man, was arrested on the suspicion of insider trading, with the charge that he must have had some type of insider information, because over the course of 2 weeks, with only investing $800, he profited over $350 million. How was this possible? Was it pure luck? Was it something illegal? Some of the trades were so high level and secret that there was nobody who could have known about them. At the time, stock prices were nosediving. Most investors were losing money. Then there's this one guy who makes 126 high-risk trades and never.
Basically, like in
the
this
SEC
story here,
and the FBI were convinced that.
So yeah, the feds, according to the story, the feds raided him, and they basically said, he had insider trading, and they, locked him up, and then eventually, like they were asking him, okay, so how did you get this information, right? Who's giving you this information that you're able to make these really profitable, trades? Clearly, it doesn't just happen by chance. And then eventually he just tells them, well, I'm from the future, so I knew about what was going to happen. They're like, of course, yeah, buddy, whatever. We would tell us, or we're not going to let you go. And then eventually somebody showed up, paid bail. I forgot, it was like a big amount of money, I think $3 million. Paid bail, and the guy, left on bail and disappeared. There's no trace of him crossing the border ever or traveling anywhere. He just, straight out disappeared. So, this is like one of those stories, though. I'll tell you that it's hard to prove or disprove. And the reason is because there's many claims about it. There's some articles that were even published from those days. But when I actually try to look into information like that, I mean, and again, maybe it was a good story because even according to the feds, they said that they couldn't find any records of this guy. There was no birth certificate for him. There was no, like fingerprints record, nothing, right? So again, if he was born in the future, then then why would there be, right?
Exactly.
But so this is one of those stories that again, maybe some tabloid newspaper came up with it and it just kind of started this whole chain of events. I guess, there's a chance of that happening. But at the same time, I don't know. I mean,
it's interesting. I mean, just because they said it's high risk trade, so I mean, I guess that's what makes it really.
Yeah, because
really
think about
crazy.
it. If you were gonna travel back in time, what wouldn't you use some of the information that you had from the future to your benefit to make money?
If it works like that, because like when you were saying before, things don't always end up going the same way because like it's like alternate timelines, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if I had the information, that's the first thing I would do is like play the lottery or do something crazy and get a lot of money.
Yeah, if you
that is interesting. Did you ever see that? Which might be a little off this story, but that theory, I think there was like about like some book being written about like Donald Trump's family and a time travel or some shit.
Heard about I would say out of all the time travel stories, that is maybe, and again, it's a theory or a conspiracy theory because the actual proof never talks about time travel. But that is the only thing out of all of them that I just thought was, whoa, that was a coincidence. And the funny thing is that if somebody had told you about this 10 years ago, 12 years ago, all the material was already there, but you wouldn't, the stuff just wouldn't make sense. It wasn't until Trump ran to be a president, and then we saw all the crazy shit that happened with all the people rioting and all that stuff. So basically,
I remember there was a lot of things in the book that was like,
so basically, a guy called Ingersoll Lockwood from the 1800s.
Said his name was Barron Trump in the book too, and which was
so
like they had a lot of stuff. Yeah.
So the interesting thing is that basically, this guy Ingersoll Lockwood wrote a whole bunch of books, right? Like a collection of these books, and you can actually get his books again on Amazon. I'll provide a link or something. Or you can go to the Library of Congress because they're actually there as part of the record, right? So they're actually in the U.S. Library of Congress Library, whatever it is, the thing. So you can go to Washington and you can actually see it. So it's now as a historical document. So it's not something that you could just forge or say, somebody wrote this book in the 1800s. No, it actually was written in the 1800s and it's been kept on record. And basically, it's the most interesting, I guess, is it's got 3-book collection. Includes basically, there's 2 books about Barron Trump, novels. And then there's also one book they wrote called 1900 or The Last President, which is very interesting. So I'll tell you this. The first two books, Barron Trump, spelled, basically with one R. So it's like, what do you call it? Like a royalty, right?
Right.
And otherwise Trump, the same thing as Donald Trump's name. Well, Donald Trump and Melania's, son, his name is Barron, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, spelled those slightly differently, but it's basically it's the same thing, right? It's just you add one R, it's Barron instead of Baron, and then otherwise it's the exact same name, Barron Trump. And these books that Ingersoll Lockwood wrote in the 1800s, mind you, and even the guy himself who wrote it is kind of a mystery. Nobody knows about him. There's no record of him. And then he has a photo, I think, in the first book that he wrote, and then in the last one, I think, which is like 30 or something years apart. And he literally looks identical in both of these pictures. It's like he hasn't aged, which is just very weird and strange. But anyways, this guy, so some people claim maybe this guy is a time traveler who saw something and he thinks, but either way, these are just theories. But what is fact is a guy in the 1800s wrote 3 books. The first 2 called, The Adventures of Little Barron Trump. Literally, they're books that are. Let me see here. I think I had like a video kind of showing some of the photos in it and things like that, so you guys can kind of see it. But essentially, it's a story about this a kid who's from a royal family, and it's the you can see this, right?
Yeah.
So basically, Barron Trump's marvelous underground journey, and then basically it's about this kid, and this is actually the son of Donald Trump, and it's essentially showing this I guess stories. It talks about these different stories, and I read these. They're not very well written books, as in if you're just looking for entertainment, I guess they're not very well written. But these books kind of have, I guess, a lot of what you could call coincidences. So they talk about, what's its own, this coincidence? I'm going to try to remember now. They talk about things like that he comes from a wealthy family, that he's bored with life, and then he finds this time machine, or somebody gives him a time machine, and he starts traveling through time.
Right.
And then going underground and all that stuff, and all these different things happen, and he comes across these different characters, and a lot of them are actual very similar names to names that are somehow connected to Donald Trump, or the Trump family, you should say. So that's kind of the some of the interesting things. Then the next really interesting things is that what's it called? Here, let me find. Looking here for like pictures to kind of show you guys. So it says up here it was published in 1889, and it says, and it was quickly forgotten thereafter because, like I said, they're not very well written books.
Right.
So he's so it says, in these books, the young German protagonist Wilhelm Heinrich Sebastian von Trump, better known as Barron Trump, travels around and under the globe with his dog Bulgler, meeting residents of as yet discovered lands before arriving back home at, guess where? He arrives back in his home called Castle Trump. And where does Barron Trump live? Well, now I guess, he lives with his father in Mar-a-Lago in Florida, but before he lived in New York in the Trump Tower. And literally, their building literally has the name Trump. That's like covered, I don't know, have you ever been in his building?
I've never been there.
Yeah, it's like ornate with gold, and like, it's a pretty lavish building inside and out. And some people even called it, like, years ago already, they said it was like his castle, right? So that's where Barron Trump, comes from. He has a rich father that gives him basically all this money. Like he's, there's just like a lot of little things that you kind of go, okay, that's just like, seems like, there's like some similarities, right?
Right.
What's interesting though is then Ingrid Lockwood writes then after that another book called, what was it, the 1900, right? 1900 or The Last President. Mm-hmm. And that book, what I find interesting about it is that it basically, how would I best describe it? Well, it talks about the last president of the United States. It doesn't really have like a definite ending, but it talks about that this president gets elected, who's basically like that nobody ever thought he would ever run. He announces the thing, he gets elected, and then it says like things, for example, like that once he becomes elected, there's all these people rioting, including, and those days, again, when this book was written, there was no such like term as communist. Like there was an idea that Marx wrote about, but nobody talked about communists per se, but it essentially talks about people who are anti-capitalists, which we could best describe as communists, rioting, and then in the streets, joining with these anarchists, and it says Fifth Avenue in New York is on fire, and people are angry, and you know what's on Fifth Avenue, right? That Trump Tower.
No. Oh, Trump. Okay.
And when Trump got elected, that's what happened. There was all these rioting, and the people were getting angry, and this and that, and they were like surrounding. They literally had to like block off parts of Fifth Avenue so people wouldn't like break into the his building. Right? I mean, it's just like there's so many similarities. So it talks about that. It talks about that. Was it? Oh, it even talks about that. The president then appoints somebody, very high up to the cabinet of the government. And I think they just referred to him by his last name, called Pence. And of course, Trump ran, and who was his vice president? You remember? Mike Pence.
Oh yeah, Mike Pence. Yeah.
So it's just like so many little things like that just makes you kind of go, oh wow, okay. It's just it just makes you kind of go, it's a little weird, and there's a whole bunch of other.
It's a lot of coincidences in just one book. Like how does one person get so many things, right?
Exactly. So now either because there's also people who, remember we talked about in the episode of about ghosts and things like that sometimes people have this intuition, and I'll tell you, I'll tell you, like my wife definitely, she can she can't see in the future, but she detects like one time I remember she woke up literally and she was like a thing, and I'm asking her like, what's wrong? You can clearly see she was like distressed with something, and then she says, I don't know. It's like I think like it's like one of my friends got into a bad accident, like something bad is gonna happen. I just like this weird feeling. He couldn't describe it. He didn't have a specific thing, but she had this feeling, and like I think she even knew like the time and that it was dark at night and all that stuff. Boom! The next day we hear that one of her friends in Ecuador got in a really bad car accident. And I was just like, wow, that's weird. Like, and it happens multiple times already with my wife. And there's other people who obviously, it's like weird. They either are lucky like that in that sense, lucky and unlucky that they can foretell, especially these dramatic events, or also, even like with her, I think it is with her grandma. Like she literally had her, this was a few years ago, and her grandfather was already passed away when her grandma was sick, and she told me something. It was something like she had a dream. She said, "Oh, my grandpa, it was in my dream." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, it was a nice dream." She goes, "Yeah, he was dressed all nice, like he was going out somewhere, like in his best suit." And I remember him, but he said, "I'm waiting for her." My mijita, right? Like he calls her. Mm-hmm. And she goes, "Waiting for who?" He goes, "Yeah, she's coming. She's coming with me. It's finally time." And then she said she woke up and she comes on thinking, "Oh my God, is he talking about grandma?" And then the next day her grandma passed away. Wow, like crazy. You know what I mean? Like shit like that. And this I've heard from multiple people already that had things like this that I can't 100% confirm, but with my wife I can, because she literally would tell me the stuff and then would like 1 or 2 days later. Yeah. So some people I know have been saying online that this guy Ingersoll Lockwood was basically somebody who maybe had really good intuition. He could sense something, but basically over 100 years into the future. And that he felt something. There was some images maybe he saw or whatever, like that Nostradamus guy who kind of this thing, he predicted some of the things in the future, but it's, I don't know. It's just, could it be that? Now there's also some stories who say that he was a time traveler and that he, was in the future and he saw a thing. And then there's other people who claim that the Trump family has a time machine, or they're somehow like tied in with it's a crazy conspiracy theory. But of course, one thing is, and again, me being very like, sure, let me go with it. Let's kind of look into it. Here's what I found that I thought was even more weird. After you read these 3 books by this, very strange author, and you'll basically just see all these similarities, like just these similarities of like, again, like I said, like Fifth Avenue riots, this president is very controversial, people who are anti-capitalism, attacking him. Then then there's also this rich kid who comes from this family, also last name Trump, and like just all these weird things, right? These coincidences. Yeah. When you start reading that, you start going, holy shit, like how did this guy just happen to mention all these things, right? That kind of, again, in the 1800s wouldn't make any sense. But now, like I said, even 10 years ago, if you read his books, you'd be like, what the hell? This doesn't make any sense. There's nothing to think. But then now you read it after Trump has been president, and you kind of go, holy shit, like this is a lot of the stuff has happened.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, exactly. And then I started looking to it, and John G. Trump is Donald Trump's uncle, essentially, his father's brother. John G. Trump, I can actually bring it up here so you guys can see for yourself. This is on Wikipedia. Not that Wikipedia is the most reliable thing of information, but can you see this?
Yeah, I can see it now.
So you see, this is him. That's his uncle. John G. Trump in 1979. That's the photo. Born in August 21st, 1907. What's it called? He died in 1985. Well, see what he was here. He was a professor in MIT. So not just your average professor. I mean, this is MIT. He was a recipient of National Medal of Science, Academy of Engineering. He was developing rational radiation therapies. He developed the first $1 million volt X-ray generators. And he's the paternal uncle of the U.S. President Donald Trump, it says here, right? And what's interesting is that during World War II, Trump, or John G. Trump, switched from work on hospital X-ray machines to research into similar technologies, especially the development of radar. During the 1940s, he joined the newly formed National Defense Research Committee as the technical aide to Carl Compton, president of MIT. And then during 1942, Trump became secretary of Microwave Committee, subcommittee of NDRC, whatever. There's like a part here I want to think. So he was, basically he was then working on these top secret technologies where they were helped to create groundbreaking process in developing practical devices and systems which would see widespread deployment in combat. And then the interesting thing is that after the war, so you can see here, he was working on the high voltage engineering with the High Voltage Engineering Corporation. So here, I forgot where I saw this, but basically he was literally called upon by the FBI to work right after World War II to work on like some top secret project. So again, they can't disclose what the project was, but top secret. It's probably something with national defense, things like that, technology. Well, right around the same time that John G. Trump was called to do that, another interesting event happened. Also there in New York, where he was living. A guy by the name of Nikola Tesla, which I'm sure you heard, he was pretty much the father of everything we know as electricity. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now because he basically perfected DC technology for electricity, but also invented AC technology, alternating current, and generators, motors, all this stuff, right? The fact that we have even power plants that can transmit electricity and all these electrical devices, or radio waves, everything. Anyways, this guy was working, on a lot of crazy technologies afterwards. I'm saying Nikola Tesla. One of them was this free energy technology that he says is possible and it works, but just after that, all these companies who were providing electricity, and one of them was like Westinghouse, which was supplying a lot of the money for his experiments, cut him off. And it's funny because they cut him off when he was building this giant free energy tower in New York, and you can find photos of it. It was like over 100 feet tall. And they literally, when Westinghouse found out about where his money was going for, because Nikola Tesla kept on kind of delaying and lying about it. And then he asked him finally he found out from somehow. He goes, so what are you actually building? And then basically he said, well, it's a free energy device. Then he said, well, that's it. We're cutting off all your money. They scrapped it, destroyed the tower. And this and that. When he was furious, and then he told him, the story goes that he told him, why would I develop something that then is going to allow people to have free electricity? He said, unless I can charge you money for it, I don't want this to exist. Because
that makes sense. You're cutting off the guy's finances that way.
Because this guy invested into all this technology of power plants and power lines, and he's like, I'm selling electricity to people. Why the hell would I want to provide now electricity for free?
Exactly, for free.
Well, then what happened is after that, Nikola Tesla kind of became kind of this loner or weird guy living like Westinghouse actually just kind of basically sponsored him till the end of his life, told him, I'll pay your lodging and your food. But he could have, Nikola Tesla could have been a billionaire, but he actually tore up all the contracts that he signed with Westinghouse. It's a whole other cool episode we could do. But, and anyways, the long story short, Nikola Tesla dies alone in his apartment, and he was working on all this crazy technology, including time travel.
Right.
And right after his death, which is right after World War II, it was 1940, I think it was, I forget now exactly, I don't want to misquote it, but I know it was the same year that Donald Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, was working with FBI on the secret technology. And FBI, guess what they happened to do? They happened to raid Nikola Tesla's apartment, and they took all those documents, all the research he did, including the stuff about time travel.
Oh, okay.
And then, it was actually, to this day, actually, Nikola Tesla's descendants, his family, and the Yugoslavian government, the Serbian government, now they've been fighting because he was originally from there, and they were basically saying that they should have like all of those papers, those documents, all the research he did, that should belong to them because it's their relative. But FBI to this day has basically denied that they took any documents. They just said, well, we don't know.
Well, of course, they're not going to admit that.
Yeah. So it's one of those, again, conspiracy theories I heard, but it's when you consider that these books by Ingersoll Lockwood are actually in the Library of Congress, and they're so coincidental. And then at the same time, you then find out that Donald Trump's uncle, and actually Donald Trump referenced his uncle multiple times. You can find videos where he talks about his uncle and says that they had a special relationship. His uncle told him about like these incredible things that are possible, all this stuff. So like there's interviews like that. Now he never claims anything about a time machine, but then that makes you go, like literally makes me want to write a movie script of how Donald Trump's uncle comes across because he gets hired by the FBI to go and be like, hey, we found all these documents from Nikola Tesla where he's basically was on the brink of discovering a time machine. What if this guy then takes it further? What if they actually do come up with some kind of a time machine? Might be a very primitive one. And actually, that's an interesting story that like this guy John Titor said. He said that it's not that the first time machine was invented in 2036, where he's from. He said the first one was actually invented in the 20th century, so 1900. He just said that it was not very practical, and it was very inaccurate. And he said they've been kind of perfecting it and gotten much better. So by the time 2036 comes around, he said they're able to travel back like 30, 40 years, pretty accurately into the past or into the future. So again, it's just like a lot of these crazy stories. But it's interesting that you heard about that too, about these books.
Yeah, no, because I told you I went down the rabbit hole one day, and I remember that one just popped back into my head. I'm like, oh yeah, there was a Donald Trump, like some conspiracy theory, but he's like a time traveler. Because I remember thinking that was super weird.
Yeah, there's a lot of coincidences in that book. So, it's one book you can get now, but it's like not very long. So if you guys are interested, get it. It's on Amazon or whatever, anywhere else you can find books. I'll try to provide the links to that, and also some of the interesting videos I found actually too about it. But
they might be able to. The listeners might be able to find something else that we might have missed.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. There's a lot of things, but I'll tell you this: that I think at the end of the day, in practical terms, right now, I would say that in a way we are time traveling, kind of like I was saying, but without even realizing. And I think it's not beneficial to us or to our health and all that stuff. Because when you think about it again, really everything that happens, right? Like I was saying before, happens in the present, right? The moment. Yet when you really look at how most people live their lives, they're almost never in the present. They're always in their mind, conceptually, they're time traveling. They're either reliving the past or they're already imagining the future.
Yeah, most people, and I think that's also just to do with a lot of it has to do with social media as well. I think just because
distractions,
distractions and stuff. But just in general, I find a lot of people, they either live in the future or the past. It really just depends on the person. Most people, it's rare that somebody like lives in the present. It's rare. I think if you look around at an event,
and isn't that a problem?
And the person that's enjoying it is the one that's living in the present.
Yeah, exactly.
People that are recording it or calling people and telling them about it or doing things like that, they're either living in the past or the future or something else.
Yeah, because like I think to be really happy and joyous, you have to really be able to take in the moment, like which is always now, the present, right?
Right. Like sometimes it's good to record like things, but I think you have to have a healthy balance. Like, because I know people that do, my sister, for example, are like two opposites on that. Like she records a lot of stuff and I record basically nothing when I'm out. So for me, I find it's more enjoyable for me to just not have my phone and just, enjoy the moment. But, after my mom passed, I had very little stuff and videos and pictures, and she had all of them. So I was like, oh, okay, so this is where it's a bad thing to be the person that doesn't record anything.
But do you think, though, that those pictures are ever going to come close to your mental, basically, memories, your concepts of your mom?
No, but at the same time, if it wasn't for her having so much stuff, I would have very little to look back on, and I think I would regret it a little bit more that I didn't. I'm not saying I regret, Would
you forget, you think? Like parts? Or?
I think that's partially it, too. Like, I feel like you do start to kind of forget in a way, you know what I mean? Like you remember the sound of somebody's voice, but, like, you kind of don't at the same time after a while. You know what I mean? So I feel like having those things and being able to go back and watch, and it does help.
I guess. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with recording, trying to capture a moment, unless you're doing it so much it gets in the way of you actually enjoying the moment. Because I think you can and
that's the other thing. You know what I mean? I have some friends that I used to go to like a lot of different shows with and things like that. And I have a friend that they would like record basically like if we're at a show, they'd probably record like the whole show. Oh. You know what I mean? I'm like, how can you?
So they're not actually watching
watching it through a screen. You may as well just watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
So, I've seen all extremes. You know what I mean? I'm the extreme of never, I'm pretty much known, among my friends as being like one of the worst people with a phone. I'm just not really in my phone like that. Like if I'm on my phone, it's usually.
But if you time traveled to Mike Tyson fights, then you would be recording.
That's the one time I think I would record it. I'd be like, this is crazy. But no, I'm just.
And if you missed it,
I try to live
even if you forgot to record it, you could still go back in time again and
then just watch it again.
Yeah,
exactly.
I guess here's the thing: if time travel actually is possible, then why would you ever care about recording things or taking photos? You could just literally
keep going back and watching it.
Yeah, you could relive it. Like, I mean, imagine you could go back in time and be like, "Hey, Mom, I want to hang out with you."
Exactly. Yeah.
Isn't that fucking crazy?
That'd be awesome. But I guess the problem is too with that is if everybody had that technology, it'll get used and abused like everything else.
Yeah, I guess. But you couldn't stop
the wrong people having it.
Same time, you couldn't really stop it. I guess. I mean, it would. Yeah.
I feel like that'd be something that like only the super rich and elite would have access to. Usually, that's how people in society limit.
At the beginning, because think about it, like who are the first guys who went up in airplanes? was not the rich because they didn't want to risk their life. It was all the people who were crazy enough.
Look at like Elon Musk and all these people that are trying to do the space travel.
Well, yeah, but he's not the one actually himself traveling in space. He still hasn't been on a rocket. You know what I mean?
He hasn't? I thought he had.
No, he hasn't. It's that the guy from Amazon.
Other rich people have. I've
Jeff
seen that some
Bezos.
rich people are paying to do it now.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm saying, but this is still like now it's no longer like the newest technology, right? It's thing. But the first people were just regular people who were just crazy enough to try it.
Yeah, regular people and like animals and chimps and shit.
Yeah, because like imagine if somebody
they could just die, right?
Yeah,
So.
if somebody told you, hey, we can send you back in time. You can meet your mom. But there's a 50-50 chance that maybe you'll just disintegrate into nothing or you'll show up in the time of dinosaurs. Like, we don't know. It's like, would you take that chance?
I probably would.
Really?
But, well, maybe not now because, I got like a family and everything. But, if I didn't, I probably would.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, I don't know. But I for sure do think that, like I said, that most people are so worried and reliving their past or imagining their future that they're actually forgetting the present, which is the most important thing because that's really the only thing that we have. And I'll tell you that like as an example, I'll tell you living here in Florida, ever since I moved here, because before I think I sometimes would do the same thing too. Like I see people who come here from all over US or even Europe. And to me, I guess the beach now is because I live so close to the beach and all that stuff. I can just, sometimes on a lunch break, I'm like, well, let me just go to the beach, right? A few minutes away, just jump in there, have my lunch, dip my feet in the sand or whatever, and come back. And it's just like a normal thing. So for me, it's not like this, oh my God, this big deal, I guess. But for all these people who go and they spend all this money and travel, and then they come to the beach, and then the funny thing is, I see them. Put up these huge tents. They bring stereo music. They barbecue on the beach, whatever. They have headphones on. They have like all these distractions.
Yeah.
Or even like some of them like come in and like bring a book and they're like reading a whole book, or they're sitting and meditating on the beach. And it's like you can read a book at home. You don't have to spend all this money to travel down here. Or you can read a book at home. You can meditate at home. Probably even more peaceful than thing. You can do all these things. When you're going to come to the beach, why not actually look at the beach, look at the water, the sand, go enjoy it. No, it's like almost like these people come, it's almost like the beach is an excuse to go and do other things.
Well, that too. And then there's also, you have to remember too, that there's people that, again, going back to social media, there's a lot of people that just do shit just to show that they're doing shit. Like it's important for them to show that like, oh, look at me, I'm on vacation. Look at me, I'm on the beach. But like even one of the last times I went to Barbados, me and my cousins were laughing about that. Like there was a bunch of girls on the beach. They just we saw when they just got there, and they literally spent 90% of the time just taking selfies. And I don't even remember if they ever even ended up getting in the water. Like we were all in the water, just like shocked at just like the fact that they literally just sat there for like half an hour just taking pictures and really doing nothing, not really enjoying themselves. And
exactly, not enjoying.
There's no point in that.
Exactly, not enjoying where they actually are. Right? It's like
right. But that's because they want to be able to show everybody, like, look at me, right? Like, look what I'm doing. It's not really about enjoying the beach. It's more about look what you wish that you were doing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's also similar to, I would say, like when somebody shows up and or like even people who are here, like here in Florida, where they live. Few minutes from the thing, and it's funny because like sometimes I'll talk to somebody and I was like, oh, nice day today, I just went to the beach, and they're like, oh man, I haven't had time, I've been like so busy with work. And I'm like, well, I mean, you're living 5 minutes from the beach. It's not like you need a lot of time, like literally, instead of because I think it was one time I was waiting at this pizzeria before I ate pizza and just started chit-chatting with this guy, and I'm like, yeah, but like the time that you're waiting here for this pizza, because they made us wait freaking like over half hour, you could have already gone to the beach. Like we're like right there, and you come back, and like you don't really think, and then it's interesting because then when you talk to them, you realize that most people are, and that's why I think also most people are not really, or I don't know, maybe they don't know how to be happy unless they're distracted. It's like they keep themselves distracted with oh, I have to go, make money. I have to do this. I have to do that at home. Then I have to do, this. I have to go there. And it's everything's always for later. Like, oh, if I do this and this, then I'll be happy because then I'll achieve this or then I'll achieve that. And then it's thing, and it's like this parable, this story once that I read of, was it like this rich guy, travels and he goes to this island, right? And then like some tropical island, I don't know, Cuba or something. And he sees a fisherman, right? Just kind of, sleeping with his hat thing on the beach next to this boat. He comes and he starts talking to him and goes, hey, how's life? How's everything? Oh, everything's good. He goes, oh, is that your boat? He goes, yeah. He goes, oh, that's a nice boat. He goes, shouldn't you be out there maybe fishing? He goes, no, I'm not in a hurry. He goes, well, I mean, how many fish did you catch today? He goes, today, not many. It wasn't that good. Only made like $5. And he goes, oh man, but if you have like a good fishing day, how much you could, make? Oh, I could maybe make, even like $50. He goes, oh, so why don't you like spend more time fishing so you can make more money? And then, you can go and with that, you can buy another boat. He goes, oh, okay. And he goes, well, what do I do with that? He goes, well, you can hire somebody else. After that, grow your operation. You do it really well, and you buy even more boats. You can have a whole flotilla, and then you can come back, and you can be managing all these people. You can make all this money, right? And he goes, okay. Well, why would I do all that? He goes, why? Because then you can be a rich man. Okay. And I don't really care about being a rich man. He goes, what do you mean? You're rich. You can do anything you want. Like me. Look at this. I worked, and now I'm here, and on vacation. And he goes, okay. And what are you doing? Yeah, I can just relax on the beach. He goes, yeah, what do you think I was doing? You know what I mean? And the guy's like basically tells him, you took all this time and you wasted in a way all these years of life just so you can go and sit and relax on the beach. And the guy goes, well, I'm already doing this. Why would I spend all these years of my life and things? So, you know what I mean? Not to say that hard work isn't worth anything. But I would say you should do it only if you actually, for the sake of doing the work. Like if you're really enjoying fishing, go fishing. If you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Just like the same thing, like I don't know, like me, for example, like I would never do construction for somebody. I just don't think it's work very rewarding building something that you don't care about for somebody. That's just me. And I have a friend, for example, who got into construction. He loves it. But guess what? I actually built multiple things in my life. And actually last thing is, my house, right? As you know, I kind of gutted it all and rebuilt it. Right. But I did it because I genuinely, like, I could have hired somebody. I had the money. It wasn't about that. I literally wanted to kind of like test my skills. I was curious. I was, like I was genuinely enjoying the process.
Right.
So it wasn't.
And sometimes it's just you want to have that like that feeling like you accomplished this. Like this is something I made. Like this is like I put on. Even in our last house, me and my dad did the the floors in all the bedrooms, and like, you just get that feeling of wow, like I did that. Like these are I put these in. It's not just somebody paid and then they're just here. It's just like I put these in. Like it's.
But for example, if you didn't enjoy that, and then you're spending 50 years of your life doing that just so you can make money, so that one day you can think, it sucks, exactly, right? So that's what I'm saying is like, I think most people find themselves stuck. And because they don't even think about what they're doing really in the long term, and it's like that guy, the business guy, he's worked his whole ass, his whole life, worked his ass off, so that he can at the end, what he really wanted to do is to be on a beach, relax, and go fishing. And it's like, well, you could have done that much quicker. You could have achieved that goal, but you just went about it the wrong way.
Exactly.
So it's
one of the things about life. They say the youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah, that is true.
Because it's true. If you had, the body that you had in your youth with, your mentality now, you would get, you'd be in a whole different space in life. That's why it's just you learn things too late a lot of times in life, unfortunately.
Yes, but I don't know. I feel like maybe if I learned some of the things I've learned in the last 10 years, if I learned it by the time I'm 80, then maybe. But I still I don't feel old, And
no, I'm not saying old. It's just I'm not saying like that. Like I just mean like.
But I know what you mean.
You could have probably avoided a lot of
Oh, yeah.
headaches
Yeah.
and things like that.
A lot
If
of unnecessary
if you
drama.
knew what you know now, like in your 20s, early 20s, or late teens, if you knew what you know now, because there's a lot of things that you do, and you're just like, why the hell did I? Like, what was I thinking with that one?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, but all that comes with experience. But unfortunately, you need to live through things to get that experience. So
Exactly. But then in that sense, though, I also feel like fortunate that I went through some of the things that I went through it. Even though, at the time maybe it weren't pleasant, but now I kind of go, like, man, like I'd be a dumbass if I didn't go through that experience in my life. You know what I mean?
yeah, sometimes you need the bad shit to happen to actually, learn something, or even if not to learn something, but sometimes it just makes you tougher, and you just need the bad experience. But that's how it goes.
So I think we gotta just at the end of the day not worry too much about time travel, unless we actually get the time travel machine, Back to the Future car or something.
And then even still, then what?
Well, yeah, exactly. And then, like I said, it's not like I if I had it, I'll tell you, a time machine, I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't care less about winning the lottery, all that stuff. What I would care about is, for example, like me, like I would love to see, my grandma again, my father, like those are, have those experiences, right? I would love to see how the world was. Like I was always interested in like early days of America, or like the Wild West, or during the for example, like the times of dinosaurs. I'd love to see those kind of things. I would just literally go for experiences. I wouldn't go like to go. I don't know.
Yeah,
like that one story.
I would do that too. I would go back just to see certain specific people and things like that. There's not really too much I would go back to do other than that, but yeah, that's pretty much what I would do with it. Just probably see just like family members that have passed away, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Anyways, we gotta stop time traveling in our heads. Gotta be in the
exactly.
moment.
No, that's facts. No, really, I make an active, like I try to make an active, make it a thing, like every day, to try to like, just live it now. Like even just with certain problems, there's certain problems you just can't control, and it makes no sense worrying about them all day. It's not here yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you spend so much time worrying until that, like, you literally just waste it. Like, just say you have, like, for instance, bills coming in, and it's like, oh, I don't know how they're going to pay them. Well, it's not due today. So maybe, like try to figure something out, but like, don't like kill yourself over it.
Yeah. I mean, don't you also though find that like a lot of what we tend to worry sometimes about, like whether let's say it's finance or something like that, if you really think about it, when the actual moment comes, whether it might come in a few minutes or an hour or 2 or 3 days, or maybe, in a year from now, when it actually happens, it's usually not as bad as what you're in your head. Sometimes people can make, right? Like
a lot of times. Yeah. And
like,
then even if it is,
and a lot of times it seems to like resolve
figure
itself.
it out.
Exactly.
It goes away eventually.
Yeah.
So like it never matters as much as you think it's going to.
Exactly.
And then you're just like, man, I wasted like a week worrying about that.
Yeah. I also find, because I used to do that when I was younger. Oh man, I used to like sometimes, but like now that I think about it, like stupid shit. But I was like, no, but what if this happens? What if that? And it took me all these years to figure out that if I can make a plan, like a definite plan to avoid the situation or better the situation, I should just do it. But I gotta be like, okay, what can I do now? If I can't do anything about it now, then forget it.
Exactly.
When the moment comes, I'll deal with it.
Like we could just say it was like, using that example again, like you got like a crazy bill coming out next week. At the end of the day, you could die today. So
exactly.
And then you wasted all that time worrying.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like you could have just been enjoying yourself. Like that bill, like when you're dead, the bill's gone. So
yeah, I think the same way.
And that's how I always try to put it in my head. Like if I can't do anything about it, try to stop worrying about it, because I might not even wake up tomorrow. So what's the point in sitting here worrying about it?
Just laugh it off.
Exactly. Laugh it off or whatever. Make like obviously don't be an idiot. Like still whatever your problem is or bill or whatever it is, try to figure it out. But like figure it out in increments. Like, like take, if you have like 2 weeks, maybe you take like an hour today. And if you're not getting anywhere in your plan, think about it tomorrow.
Yeah. Like exactly. Like, cause that's what I heard advice from somebody like years ago, where Ezekiel said, like, if you can't do anything about your problem or your issue right now, then don't worry about it. You can think about it, but don't worry about it. If you can do something right now, then you'll do it. But if you
That's
can't,
exactly it. If it's out of your hands, like, if it's something that someone else is controlling or the world is controlling or whatever, like you can't do anything about it. So sitting here worrying about it and talking about it isn't going to change anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's all it's going to do is like stress you out, ruin your day, so there's no point to that. We don't know how many days we got. So like, what's the point sitting here, worrying about it?
Yeah. Good talk, man.
Oh yeah. Always.
As always. How was the move though overall? I know you're in your new place.
Oh man.
How was the new place?
Being positive, the place is much bigger.
Okay.
We mainly moved to get my son a backyard and a basement, which we got. So in terms of that stuff, it's been good. But moves are never.
What you gonna do in the basement?
What am I gonna do with it?
Yeah, like in the basement, you have plans.
I think
is it
far
finished,
I want to have workout equipment on one side, and I want to do a home theater system at some point. Pretty soon.
So kind of
because,
like a man cave kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of. But like mostly they're just like, I'm trying to do something like entertainment wise, like, because I want to be able to have people buy and stuff, and like I'm thinking more in terms of like get-togethers and stuff. So
you're not bugging your son.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you can like hang out with your buddies while you can let your son sleep, kind of thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, like watch UFC, boxing, or even with him too. I figure like, a home theater system would be useful even for kids because like all kinds of movies come out and this and that, and it's just a better experience. Like I find like you spend a lot of time at home too, so you want to make sure that when you are home you have stuff to do. So I figured that would be cool for when we're home. And then, like I said, we mainly bought it also for the backyard, and the backyard's big, so he's been out there every day since we've been here, like the last few days. So yeah, he loves it. Like at my dad's house, whenever we visit there, it's hard to get him out of the backyard. He's an outdoor guy.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, which is good because in this day and age, that's not easy.
No. Once he gets older or old enough, start taking him camping. Although I don't know how much of a camper
I want to do
you are.
like a lot of different things like that with him. Like I already have him in classes. Like earlier today, we actually, when we were talking, I took him to swimming. Like he does swimming lessons now, and I plan to put him in a few other classes. And
does he enjoy the water?
Active. Like I want him to be an active kid.
Uh-huh. He enjoys the water. He's not scared.
No, he's never been scared. He's been swimming since he was like maybe like 3 or 4 months old. Maybe 4 months old. I forget. Whenever it is that you can start, he started like immediately because it's a safety thing, right? You want him to be able to swim.
Yeah.
And so he's always liked it, never had a problem. We have pictures of him underwater when he was less than 6 months old or something like that. But there was a little bit of a break. So he kind of reverted a little bit because also because when we first took him to classes, I was in the pool with him, but now it's like just teachers. So he wasn't doing well for a bit, but now he's kind of back on track.
I know what you mean. Well, my kids were similar in that, when they were small, like really small, they couldn't walk. I would just throw them in the pool and just jump with them. So they sometimes got like, but then they got used to it. Then after that, there was like a period where they just like were all, they could walk. They just didn't want to do what I was telling them, or they would run away. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of almost became like afraid of water. But then they slowly started, like, I just basically just gave up and said, whatever, they're going to be whatever. They'll never go swimming. And then they kind of went on their own when I wasn't forcing them. And especially once we moved to Florida and we have, a pool in our backyard, they're just there like every day because it's hot. Mm-hmm. But it started, and I know it is with them only like dipping a little bit or staying to the edge or on the shallow end. And then I don't know when, but dude, man, like, now you look at them and they're like, they're 7 and 5, and they're both crazy. I mean, they'll run, do flips in the pool, no life jackets, nothing. They dive like I play.
That's good.
Yeah, it's like when I think back of how they were before, I'm like, holy crap! Like they'll go on the deep end and they dive to the bottom, pick up things, and like a fish.
That's really good. Yeah. That's really good.
Because I was horrible.
Especially living in Florida and all that, you need to be a good swimmer. Everybody should know how to, like, even if you're not like an Olympic swimmer, everybody should know how to like keep alive in the pool at the very least. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
it's an essential skill. Yeah.
Exactly. Like I'm not like the best swimmer. I'm not anywhere near like my cousins in Barbados. Like they can swim, but like I can stay alive. I know if I'm going in a pool, if I'm in the deep end, I'm gonna survive. But yeah.
No, it's an important skill. All right. Anyways, let's end it. Let's end it on this note.
Yes.
Started with time travel, ended with swimming. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess we've what's the conclusion here? So you believe time travel is it's a thing?
I mean, scientifically, it's possible. Scientists know it's possible. Whether it's ever practical is a different story. I keep an open mind, saying, I think it, like again, just like 100 or more or 150 years ago, people thought you couldn't travel faster than 100 kilometers an hour or like 50, 60 miles per hour because you would literally disintegrate your body. Well, now we know. Okay, I mean, we can do that a lot faster, right? We've traveled in airplanes and stuff, several times, dozen times faster. So that's not an issue. And so again, just because we can't conceive of that, well, we know that basically, as far as right now, we know that the speed limit is, in the universe is the speed of sound, speed of light.
Right.
Because we're already, but that's another thing. Like people didn't, for the longest time, didn't think you could travel faster than sound. Now, you go Mach 2 or 3, right? Mach just means you're getting, at the speed of sound or 2 or 3 times the speed of sound. So that's not that's a whole other thing that, again, like it just at one point it was not possible. Now it's like, common knowledge. So I do think with technology progressing the way it is, I think it is eventually something that we're going to reach, the speed of sound. Now, whether somebody at that time then decides to use that to build a time machine, and whether they've ever gone faster than the speed of light, so that they could actually go back in time. Again, that I just don't know. But if it is possible, then I guess those people have already been here because time is not an issue.
Exactly. I think that was a perfect way to put it. Like,
but I also
think going into it, I've never really thought that you could try time travel just because of the paradoxes we talked about before. But like, I think by the end of the conversation, I'm kind of leaning towards, it's possible. You know what I mean?
But I also think
possible.
I also think though most of those stories are complete BS that we heard.
Oh no, I'm not saying the stories are real.
Yeah.
I just mean like scientifically, it does sound like I guess it would be possible.
Yeah.
Like I was kind of leaning towards at the beginning and not possible, but now I'm kind of leaning towards it could be one day.
Yeah, it could be exactly. And if it happens one day, then that means it exists everywhere because you can time travel, right?
Exactly.
But again, the people I guess who would have that knowledge, maybe they hopefully be smart enough to know not to create those paradoxes or whatever, right? Like where they're messing with things. Like for all we know, I don't know, maybe those alien sightings, maybe again, they're just people from the future and they just come down just to look at us because they're curious, it's like an attraction park. Like instead of like, why go to Disney World, to see, I don't know how, things used to be back in the day when you go to like those different attractions.
Yeah. When you can say there is a theory of that. There is actually, I've read a theory and they made a video. I'll send it to you another time of basically like a concept of aliens coming back in time. Like they're essentially time travelers and not really aliens per se.
Yeah, that is plausible to me. But I also think that if they did that, they would probably just be almost out of curiosity. They'd be like, hey, let's see how our great grandfather and mother or whatever, how they lived. And they would just
exactly, yeah.
Or
I would do. I'd be curious to see how my ancestors, what they did,
Exactly, yeah. But at the same time, if you're aware of what kind of a mess you can create by interacting, then you'd probably just always stay up in the sky there and
and be careful. Exactly.
Yeah, just look at it from a distance, kind of be like, oh, cool,
Exactly.
So I guess it's a possibility, but at the same time, it's not something I worry about or think about.
No, not at all.
All right. Anyways, I guess that's it for this one. So thank you guys. Right. See you in the next one.
All right. Peace.